Colin, when you're training and preparing for a championship match, like a big opener, and the management get this idea that, geez, the lad is absolutely humming in training, they start him. But the players he's been marking in training are so different from, like, let's say, coming up against Limerick. So, you don't have Limerick-type players in Cork. You have some brilliant players, but they're a different type. So then you go out and those players, like, and I look at Tip last weekend and I'd be like, okay, some of these lads were probably humming in training, but they weren't prepared for the pace that Clare had, because Tip don't have that in internal matches. Do you think that's ever a problem for Cork when they come out into championship games, that they're not used to the physicality that they then face?
I think so, yeah. Like, if you look at Limerick, like, they've really tried to, particularly the fellas who are just physically naturally gifted, the 6'4", 6'5" lads, big and strong. They really tried to develop their hurling, and it worked. Obviously, Paul Knopp was coach; he's a brilliant coach for them. But like, a lot of the bigger lads with Cork, you'd say that those big 6'4", 5" fellas, they've seemed to fall by the wayside. Maybe that's probably Cork's style of play. Obviously, there's huge pace in the team, so I think that could be an issue, could be a factor. But again, with the internal games, it's very hard to say until a fella hits championship, is he ready? Some fellas, like most fellas who are playing really well in internal games, will probably go on to play well in championship. But you always have a couple of fellas every year then who are flying, and just obviously the heat of championship becomes a bit too hot for them, and maybe they're just not ready. Sometimes 19, 20. Myself, I wasn't really ready at that age. It might be 22, 23 before you're fully ready to kind of as an inter-county player. So Cork have a lot of fellas in that age bracket, so it's going to be very hard to tell.
Really interesting point, Shano. I have to say there, really interesting point, because they, as you said, they are marking the same types of players probably in training. Whereas, like, if you look at the boxing or the MMA, what do they do when they're fighting someone? They bring in someone of that style. So, like, realistically, you would want, if you're going playing Limerick, you would want giants coming into training. But that's not the way GA works. You work with whatever is in your squad. But saying that, before Ballyhale played, it was a Ballygunner this year, they brought a player from another club in to play the type of sweeper role that Ballygunner would play, which I thought was unusual, and they kept it all fairly hush-hush. But it's not something, that's not generally something that happens in the GA. You work with whatever you have within your own squad. But what Cork have within their own squad, as just to take Limerick as a case in point, like, they're not going to meet someone. You're not going to meet anything. It's hard to prepare for that. I suppose that's what makes it an even more difficult task.
Yeah, it reminds me, like, the 2017 Club All-Ireland. We knew we were going to come up against Gary Brennan in the All-Ireland final and thought maybe he'd play full forward. So there was a few dual lads who, primarily might play football, and one lad was brought in to sort of be that big pig in there who could run and give Keane O'Callaghan a chance to mark him a few times. So, I mean, teams do that. Colin, can you remind us of your debut and how your championship debut now I'm talking about, and your thoughts and feelings going into that first big game? Because a lot of players are kind of going through that in the last week or so.
Yeah, I made my debut in 2017. It was actually against Tip, but I had done my cruciate previous year, 2016. So I did that in February. So I was obviously out for the whole year, but I had a bank of training done. It was definitely the best I'd ever done in my career. I was back kind of full training, and it was nearly October, November by myself, and then as the team would come back. And I remember I was probably 7 months. I'd never felt as fit. I played every single league game. I played every challenge game. So while I was nervous, I really felt I was 22, I think, as well. So, I was maybe it's that small bit older, and I really felt ready to play. And obviously that game against Tip,
you hammered us.
We managed to win it. Yeah, it was a great game down in Thurles, and Tip were obviously the All-Ireland finals from the previous year. But, like, if you're ready, if you have that bank of training done, you've done everything you can. While you will be nervous there, I was still very confident that I was going to perform well. But there's nothing like it. There's nothing to compare you. As soon as the whistle goes, the pitch is out there. The stadium is full. Like, there's nothing can prepare you for that really until you're there, and it does take that first couple of balls. As soon as you get in, the nerves go away. But and there's going to be a lot of lads like that this weekend.